Good evening and welcome to the August 2022 meeting of the International Game Developers Association Twin Cities chapter. My name is Beth Korth. I'm the chair of IGDA-TC and your host for this evening. So this is the intro. After the intro, we'll do some plugs and announcements. If you have anything that you would like to share, please mention the IGDA-TC board on the Discord and we'll try and get that plug in for you. Tonight we have a presentation by Javiera Cordero on managing the chaos of looking for work in the game industry. I'm really looking forward to it because I don't know, many of you might be looking for work, but I am. And then presentation number 2, the IGDA-TC board has kind of hijacked that to give you a little bit of an update on how things are going and what we're working on to help really support the community a little bit better. After the meeting, just like every other month, we will gather in the Minneapolis or St. Paul Discord channel and have a little bit of a chat. So, welcome. Our meetings are open to everyone. We want this to be a safe and inclusive community for people. Anybody who makes games, whether you are a hobbyist or a veteran, you are welcome here. You do not need to be a member of IGDA to attend our events. If you have any questions or concerns, or if anything happens that you want to report, you can always get the board members on the Discord or email us at igdatwincities@gmail.com, which is conveniently at the bottom of all of these slides if you need to write it down. So IGDA-TC is run by an all-volunteer board. Eli, myself, Mark, David, Zach, and Peter, we all do a monthly meeting to discuss how we can better serve our community. And tonight is kind of going to be a little bit of a culmination of a few different conversations we've had. So I'm looking forward to getting some feedback from everybody on how we can help you a little bit better. So I said you don't have to be an IGDA member to come to our events, and that is 100% true. But if you do want to become a member of IGDA, there are some benefits. IGDA.org, you can check out. There are some membership benefits, which are like a discount to GDC. Sometimes they have like hardware discounts and stuff like that. And also, at some point, I'm hoping we'll have some really cool IGDA swag to give out to our members. So our regular events schedule. This is the second Wednesday Gamedev Meeting, currently virtual, and we have people from the industry come and give presentations. Sometimes they're long, sometimes they're short, sometimes they are about hard skills, sometimes they're about soft skills. I'm just rambling because I just drank a lot of coffee, sorry. So anyways, then the third Wednesday of the month is our playtest event that is also currently virtual. People will bring in their games to prototype, their prototypes to play and get some feedback from the community. That's hosted by Lane, Dale, and Mark. And then the fourth Wednesday is the MNVR and HCI meeting, and I think Zach is still in the voice channel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So we'll be meeting again at REM 5. I guess that's technically in St. Louis Park, and also streaming on YouTube Live. And topic for this month is some creative uses of 360 video inside a VR application for Quest. So if you've seen 360 videos, those are bad. This is good, and some of the uses are displaying a far field, city and skybox kind of stuff, and then also mapping onto, in this case it's a driving demo, mapping onto the mirrors and some of the in in-dash items to show detail levels and other things that you can't afford to render on the Quest. So if you want to try that out for yourself, definitely show up in person. The Eventbrite is live now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Zach. All right, so plugs and announcements. I'm going to quick peek and see if we had any pings for others. Nope. All right, so we'll move on to our plugs. 2DCon, I haven't really talked a lot about it because there was some concerns about whether it was going to happen or not for a little while there, but we are all in now. So 2DCon is happening August 26th through 28th in Minneapolis, and that will be hosting our Indie Island and Tabletop Terrace again. So if you missed the application date, I think Joe is still totally cool with people applying, but if you are applying late, you have to ping myself or Trevor on the Discord to let us know so that we can send that acceptance email and get the billing done so that you can attend the event. And anyone who can't make the event or is also making the event but would like to, we are going to have a small preview of Indie Island Tabletop Terrace at the they're calling it the 2DCon preview or pre-party event, and that is at Wisdom Gaming on the 20th of August, and that is at the Mall of America in Bloomington. So if you are interested in showing your game there, whether you can make 2DCon proper or not, that's fine. Just let me know. I will be sending out an email to all of the folks who have registered for 2DCon either this year or previously to invite you to that. It's just that the details haven't been hammered out quite yet, so look for that in the next day or two. And also, there is another event for Global Game Jam is partnering with Photon, and they're doing a back-to-school multiplayer game jam September 16th through October 16th. And this is an event that we are considering supporting. It depends on like the interest in the community here, but if there is quite a bit of interest, we would love to try and host an in-person play party after the event is done so that people can all like see what's been made. So there'll be some announcements in the Discord and probably on the Slack too. If you have any desire to participate in this event, or if you are absolutely against it for any reason, let us know. We're just kind of looking forward to seeing how much interest there is before September. And if there is enough, we will try and like support that on our Discord and support the Global Game Jam Discord. Just kind of see if we can do a nice mini primer for Global Game Jam proper. And I don't think there's anything else, but if there was something else and I missed it, I would be happy to plug it for you next month, or you can also just pop it in the Discord. Everybody that is here will hopefully read that at some point soon. And we will be moving on to our presentations. I'm going to switch over to Javier. Are you ready?
As ready as I will ever be.
All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and my video so that you can just take it away.
Cool. And then for me to see the stream questions, what's the best way for that?
I will monitor the YouTube stream.
Okay.
And I will let you know. Do you want me to interrupt you or just give them to you at the end?
I don't mind being interrupted.
Okay, I will say hey if there's something that seems to be time specific, okay?
Okay. Cool. Let me just share my screen now. The troubles of multiple monitors. Okay. Can people see my screen? Okay, cool. Hi. So this is a talk on managing the chaos of looking for work in games. And I didn't have time to prepare for this. I found out about this opportunity very late, and then work has been crazy this week, so please forgive the very substandard presentation. But I've got some stories to share, and then hopefully some of that can help any of you that are in this process of looking for work in games. So hello, my name's Javiera Cordero. My pronouns are she, her. And I've got a lot of identities. First and foremost, I'm a producer. I can help make things happen. I'm an artist, photographer, business developer, advocate for DE&I, problem solver, writer, chef, astrologer, a lot of things. And my full-time work is as an external producer at this company called Beamable, where we have a Unity SDK for indie game developers to have access to live game features like leaderboards and content management system, and how can you create a system for players to message each other. So we create a product that answers those questions for game developers. And so I work as an external producer where we have teams of game developers that are our customers, and I meet with them and steward the development of the implementation of our SDK into their game. And then I also work part-time as an associate producer for an indie studio of 11 people based in Seattle. And we are building a Solarpunk 4X game, and that's really exciting too. So how did I get here? I had this slide because I think origin stories are kind of stupid, and sometimes it cannot feel very engaging to hear someone talk about their mythos, but they're also helpful to kind of understand the greater scope of who a person is and what's their access to things. So I'm someone who failed for 8 years to get a job in games. I'm 34 now. My first job in games I got last April. But for 8 years, 8 years ago was when I really decided, like, okay, I want to work in games. I don't know what I'm going to do. I know I can't code. I know I don't want to code. I know I'm crap at art. I'm not really interested in pursuing writing, and I didn't really have any kind of direction. So I lacked direction. I lacked guidance. I lacked strategy. And that's what I'm hoping to change today. Now, last year in January, I came out as trans, and it was something to where coming out publicly on Twitter was kind of a big deal for me, because that was where I had spent like 8 years building community in the game development, 8 years of going to conventions like PAX East and PAX West, and volunteering with Indie Mega Booth, and forming friendships and community with people who made games all across the industry. And of 8 years of failure, it was really challenging for me to come to grips of like what's going to make it easier for me to get a job in games is I will increase I will increase the ways in which I am perceived as different. But I came out on Twitter, I wrote a little thread about it, and it went really viral. And towards the end of that thread, I was like, hey, like, I'm also looking for work, and if anyone can help me, that would be great. This is a very dumb killer's joke. But so I got good at asking for help. And I think this is something that is a very underrated skill. It's something that's going to serve you no matter what job you have, no matter what stage of your career. And doing away with the shame and embarrassment and ambiguity of not knowing what to do next, and just really understanding, like, okay, accepting that things are out of your control and going to seek to actually remedy that situation is a very core and critical skill. So I got good at asking for help. I began to do research. I saw on Twitter in November of 2020 that a producer at Minecraft had posted on Twitter that she was looking for new mentees, and she wanted to give back to her Latinx community. And when I reached out to her, I had an hour-long talk with her, and she gave me a little bit more direction and told me about how, if production was something that I was interested in meaningfully pursuing, that not having a college degree wouldn't make it impossible, but with the ways that recruiters and the hiring industry discriminates against people who do not have access to higher education, it was going to certainly be a challenge. And so a way to demonstrate my aptitude and ability to communicate within teams in game development, she recommended that I get a Scrum certification. So over the course between coming out in January and getting a job in April, I spoke to over 90 producers across AAA and indie. I would say a third of these were people who I actively knew and had relationships for years. And then the other 60 were people who I just reached out to for help. And if I was speaking to a producer who I did know, I would ask, hey, would you know any other producers that would be interested in chatting with me for 30 minutes or an hour? And I never got a single no. Everyone really was interested in helping. And I think that that's something that people really sorely underestimate, is the collective interest that this industry really does have to help people. But it's just a matter of knowing what the questions are to ask and who to ask them to. So 2 months later, I got 2 job offers, not one. I got a job offer from Beamable for full time, and then a week later, the co-founders of Threshold Games had reached out to me and pitched me to become their associate producer. I ended up accepting both roles, and for the past year, have been working. Sorry, there's a pigeon flying in my window. For the past year, I've been working full time, and then part time, around 15-ish hours a week on Threshold. So 1 year ago, I was looking for work in games, and then this year, I'm hiring in games. And I want to talk about like how to like bridge that gap, and hopefully have people who are watching this not repeat the mistakes that I did. So I think this is an important question that you should be asking yourself in the process of looking for work, is that it can be very easy to spin tires in the mud and think like, oh, I want to do this thing. And then maybe you learn something new about that path of how to get there and you don't write it down. And then life happens, and maybe you've got family demands or your existing work demands or significant other demands or mental health, or any number of things can come up. And it's very easy to not to let the progress that you are cognitively making slip away into your past memory. So what I would position people to do is to centralize your info, assemble your tools, build consistent habits, identify your allies. I want to talk about this previous one for a moment, about consistent habits, in that a lot of people have expectations that they may spend a few months applying for jobs in games, and they think that by saying, oh, I'm applying for jobs in games, that they're doing it in any kind of an effective way. So I think it's really important to create sustainable habits around this, especially if you were someone like myself who was supporting themselves and having to actively work a different job outside of the industry. It can be very easy to get overwhelmed and maybe spend several hours working on applying for games, or even just looking for opportunities. You do that for a couple weeks and then you burn yourself out, and then a couple months goes by and nothing happens. And if you contrast that strategy to something that's more sustainable, like setting up a consistent schedule of maybe for 30 minutes on every Tuesday, you look for jobs. And then an hour every other week, you meet with someone who has the job that you want, so that you can start to assemble what is expected of a prepared candidate for that role. And then this kind of segues into identifying your allies, in that what I said earlier about how people underestimate how much people want to help. It's very true. And oftentimes, if you're drowning on one beach and you have friends on the other beach and they don't know you're drowning, like you're gonna drown. So if you are public and open and clear and transparent, and you reduce the friction that lies between a person understanding what kind of help you need and how to help you, that's where you're going to start to see real results. So I want to talk a little bit about the pipeline of looking for work. So the way I see it, it's research. So in this first phase, you're kind of setting some, or committing to some direction about what discipline you're going. Hopefully you are assembling not just one job title, but several job titles that lie in the discipline that you're aiming for. It was something that if I had spent my entire time looking for work just searching for jobs under the title producer, I would have never gotten the job that I have now. My current title at Beamable is customer success lead. But everything that I do is production, and the job description from the original job posting looks like it's ripped word for word from an associate producer role. But being open to other titles is going to also just increase where you can find opportunity. On planning and research, this is about concretizing the way that you speak about your past experience, and speaking in words that are designed to be understood and not just words that you are going to say. I can talk about the 10 years that I spent professionally cooking, but I can relate the labor that I did and my impact on companies to production and what the goals of production and game development are. And that was a place where I struggled for 8 years of not knowing how to translate that past work experience. And so this is a really important phase of planning and strategy, of understanding how you're going to talk about your past experience in a way that someone who is hiring for the roles that you're looking for is actually going to be in a position to understand. This next step of peer review, it's so important to reach out to people who have the job that you want and to show them your cover letters, show them what you're applying to, and to get a reality check of, are your expectations off base? Maligned expectations in looking for work is probably the single biggest contributor to people not getting invited to interviews. They just may lack a complete view of what a hiring manager expects of a prepared candidate. And so when you're a hiring manager and you get 70 applicants applying for a role, and that hiring manager only has 2 hours in the day each day to go through candidates, they're going to just do a fast selection and select a small crop. So it's all about how can you get in the crop of selected candidates, because that crop is essentially a hiring manager going, okay, it appears this person can do this job. Now let's actually interview them and see if this is a person that we'd want to work with. In the stage of identification of opportunities, this is something where a lot of people, they do the bare minimum, where they might find 1 or 2 sites that they're looking to source or look for job opportunities, but there are many other places that people can be looking. And so often in the game industry, if you speak to people who work in the game industry and you ask them, how did they get to the job that they have now? A very common answer is, oh, it was referred to me by a friend. And so understanding where you can be in a position to ask those questions and to be referred to jobs is super important. So just being clear to yourself about where you are looking, so that if you know that there are 5 places that post jobs for games, that you are making sure that you are allocating actual time for yourself in your consistent habit and schedule to check all 5 of those. In this application phase where you've found an opportunity that aligns with your experience, this is where you actually prepare your cover letter. It's where you submit your portfolio. And a lot of people, they approach this stage from a template perspective, where they are just copy pasting out names of companies and names of roles, and they maybe send out 10 applications and they wonder why they never hear back. And this is also, these aren't linear stages in the sense that you can go from one to the other. Getting to an interview stage is like a milestone and achievement in itself, and focusing not on, I need a job in games, but I need to get interviewed for positions in game development. And so if you bounce this back to peer review of who are your allies, you can also ask people who have the job that you want to maybe give you a mock interview, or ask them to see if they would be open to putting you in touch with someone they know that has hired for that role in the past, so that you can start to rehearse the way that you speak about yourself. And then there's this really funny thing of right time, right place. You may apply for the opportunity that's perfect for you, that aligns exactly with your subset of skills, and you may not even get invited to interview. And that's kind of out of your hands. And a lot of this is a great source of pain, and living in a capitalist hellscape is not easy, because your access to those resources of food and safety and shelter are directly tied to whether or not you have a job that can pay you enough to afford that. So while it can feel very personal to get rejections for jobs, it's really important to just put yourself in the shoes of the hiring manager and go, okay, if I have 70 people and they all applied and I can only hire one, the company is doing a risk assessment of who is the person that's going to be able to step into this role and comfortably execute on the responsibilities of that role. So if I apply for a job that's perfect for my experience and it's at a company that I love and it's on a game that I believe in and it's in a location that I can physically either work remotely to or I'd be willing to move to, and you find that kind of golden egg, it doesn't mean that there might not be someone better that just applies at the last minute, or maybe the company changes its mind and decides to not hire for that role, or maybe they go through a hiring freeze. But there's a lot of things that can go wrong. But so this is about the stars aligning and everything really working out golden. And so it's really important to cultivate the conditions and increase your luck stat in that regard. And then of course job offer, and then you're not going to be spending time watching talks on how to look for working games. So most people shotgun applications. Do not do this. This is going to waste your time and waste the hiring manager's time. It's really easy to spot a cover letter that has been written and had things substituted. It's easy to spot a cover letter that fails to contextualize that specific person to that specific job. So being personal in your cover letters is going to be really powerful. Prepping before interviews is super important. And a lot of this can be done through contacting the hiring manager, contacting even people who have the job that you say you want, and ask them, like, what questions were you asked in your interviews? And going back to the job description and looking at, okay, if they are asking for these kinds of skills, how can I demonstrate in the stories that I could tell in an interview that I've done this before? A lot of people don't do reconnaissance on the company. They don't. Some examples of research and prep that you can do ahead of interviews and ahead of submitting your application are looking at the company website, looking at their products, looking at what kinds of games they make, looking on LinkedIn and seeing who even works at that company and what are those people talking about. A lot of the time you can find insight, or maybe you might find out that the person that you're going to be interviewing with gave a talk at TEDx or something. And so even just doing a little extra leg effort to like watch that talk, learn a little bit more about what that person cares about, can help give you greater insight into how to relate to that person. And then this other fact is that a lot of people apply for jobs having a very poor understanding of what is expected of a prepared candidate. Not like, I read this job description, I think I could do this. That's not enough. You need to make it easy and comfortable and convenient for someone to look at your resume, look at your cover letter, look at how you speak about yourself, even look at the way that you carry yourself digitally, publicly through your social media, so that you're not applying like, hey, I'm a student and I'm looking for a job, but rather like, hey, I'm a producer and I saw this opportunity that I'm interested in. And I'm going to go through these because I talked through them. So one of the goals that I would push people to have in the looking for work process is to tenaciously improve your process at all times. If it takes you 2 hours to write a cover letter, that's okay. Writing cover letters can be hard. There's a lot of good and terrible advice on cover letters. But if it takes you 2 hours to write a cover letter for one job description, then maybe your target next week is to make that 2 hours take you an hour and a half. And then maybe over time, shoot for an hour. And then over time, shoot for 30 minutes. And then as you start to focus on how you do things, that's where you can fine tune them. And whenever you take a 10-second action that you do on a daily basis and you make that take 8 seconds, the dividends that come from fine tuning your process are incredible. And then just about the goal is like getting invited to interviews. If you are not getting invited to interviews consistently over multiple applications, then that's a point for you to do a reality check about what you are applying to and if you are actually ready for that role. Not if you think you are ready, but if someone can look at your application, someone who has the job that you want or hires for the job that you want, can look at your application and read your writing, hear your stories, hear how you talk about yourself, and actually understand that like you would be a person that would be suited to that role. On digesting the job description, I have a framework on Notion that I created for some of my mentees that I'm happy to share out after this talk. But on digesting the job description, a lot of people will look for working games by having a job description open in one tab, having Google Docs open in another, and then they hastily draft something, and then the cover letter lives on Google Docs. The job description is just dependent on the company leaving that job posting up. And that can be chaotic to kind of have all in one place. So centralizing that in a single place where you can refer to the job description, not depending on whether or not the job posting is still available, having your cover letter be right next to the job description is going to be helpful so that you can really dissect the job description and understand like how you actually fare against each tenet of the job description. It's important to like understand that you don't need to 100% meet every single tenet of a job description, but whenever you can look at a job description and you see a couple bullet points that maybe you're not great in, it's really important for you to empathize once again with the hiring manager and understand that like missing those bullet points does decrease the quality of your application. And so if you apply to a job with like a 65% quality rating, then and you don't get invited to interviews, then don't be surprised. And that's okay. But just understanding that you don't want to send out 30, 65% quality applications, but rather you send out 5 applications at whatever state that you're at the current moment, and then you begin the process of research and discussion and meeting with the people who have the job you want, so that over time how you are applying to that job becomes stronger. And in that job description, they list skills, they list actions, they list targets. Sometimes job descriptions will be talking about a person's character or how they communicate, and in other times it will be talking about hard quantifiable skills. And so meditating on like how can you demonstrate the impact of your presence at a job, and how they can look at the impact that you had on a job and then make that correlation. That's what you want to do. And then I've spoken this before, but just with peer review of checking in with the people who have the job that you want, checking in with people who may work with someone who has the job that you want, so that you can get more greater insight into the efficacy of your application. And this was something that when I was speaking to the over 90 producers, the kinds of questions that I asked producers in the 10th to 20th producer were radically different from the questions that I was asking the first 10. And so in like the first couple times that I spoke with producers, my questions were often around like, how do you structure your day? And like, what tools do you use? And then later on, my questions got to be more centered around like, what is the workflow that you have for this particular aspect of production? And how can I talk about this in a way with my past work so that someone can look at my cover letter and understand that like this is something that I'm more than capable of doing. Then I have this question of who is the Kevin Bacon between the company, between you and the company that you're targeting? If you go on LinkedIn and you look at the LinkedIn website for a company that you're applying to, it will show you people that work there. And it will also show you like how far removed you are from those people. And they might be like a third or fourth connection. If you're lucky, it's a first or a second connection. But if I know that I'm applying to, say, Rockstar, I don't want to work for Rockstar. Let's say Bungie. And I know someone who maybe doesn't work at Bungie, but they know someone who does work at Bungie. Me getting to talk to someone who works at Bungie at all is going to be really helpful so that I can begin to ask them questions about what I can expect of the interview process, or what are some current challenges that the team are facing, or learn a little bit more context about the company. And then I wanted to show, let me this real quick. How do I do this? Let me just change my share here real quick. All right. Okay. So I wanted to show you a little bit about what does it look like to actually consolidate your information in one place and not have it be lost in emails or tabs or bookmarks and all kinds of other chaos. So this is a template page that I created for people who I mentor. Right now, I'm actively mentoring several folks on their journey of looking for work in games in various disciplines. And so a lot of this upper part is just around that structure. But what I wanted to show you in this is first this game dev looking for work resources, which is a list of a bunch of places that you would go to look for game jobs, and sometimes following them on Twitter. Sometimes they will announce opportunities on Twitter before they're even posted, so that's important. But more importantly, this job opportunities database that I created. So a person, for example, that I had been helping is my friend Ryan. And these are the amount of jobs that Ryan applied to. And with Ryan's case, like Ryan was a person who was actively looking for work, and I was a person who was invested in Ryan getting work in the game industry. And so if you're going to be asking people questions to like look at your applications, it can be really chaotic to be emailing them all kinds of different material here and there, or having to go through Google Drive and find the right file, or try to find the job description and only to find out that they took it down. And so it's really helpful to have it consolidated inside Notion. So for example, the steps were that Ryan would take the job description and just put it in Notion. And this is going to be helpful so that a person who's applying for this job can reference it in one area, and it can make it really easy to share this to other people as well. And then this next step is like a line review exercise where you go line by line in the job description and you rate yourself based on your confidence of either having done that or talked about it, or your ability to do that, and whether or not that is a blocker or not for your application. And then this can be a place where you can just draft your cover letter in line here. And this just makes it easy for you to share that with your team of allies who are invested in your success. But so I'm happy to make this framework be a template to anyone watching or is interested. But when you come here and you click to log a new one, this is where this can drop the structure of where you would copy paste the job description, what questions you're going to have about the job, who do you know is involved in it, what kind of cover letters are you going to be drafting, and then questions for interviewers, all of that stuff. So just to go back to this last slide here. So I guess I just wanted to open it up to questions for anyone that has them.
So I will ask a question just because I think it'll take a minute for the stream to catch up probably. So maybe you don't have like your metrics on it, but do you know of the people that you have helped? Have they all gotten jobs, or like
I have helped 6 people get jobs in the past 2 months.
6 is pretty good. Oh, we got one from Lane here. What do you perceive as the best ways to make friends with people who have the job that you want? For me,
Mhm.
it was going to a lot of playtesting events, but I'm curious about other paths.
Yeah, totally. I think the first step is understanding for yourself what your expectations out of that relationship are, and as if you can become clear in what your expectations are of that person, it's going to be easier for you to ask for help. If this is a person who you would be genuinely interested in having a like wider relationship to, and maybe you would be interested in just actually having them as a friend and learning more about their social life, then there's a lot of different points of mutuality that you could find with someone. Um, there are producers who I am friends with now that we became friends because they posted a picture of their fancy breed of cat, and I loved it. And then we started talking, and it just so happened that production was a facet of our mutuality. So I think like understanding where your overlap is, and having clear and organized uh, questions to show up for them. Like in the early part of my process, when I would meet with producers, there was like a point in the very beginning where I would get on a Zoom call with a person who had my job and who had the job that I wanted, and I would like after 2 questions like not have any more questions to ask, and it was always really embarrassing. So I think being conscious of the time that you are asking of someone, and just being hyper aware of like any cues that they may have if they're like really busy, or of course never giving someone the grace if they need to cancel their schedule is really important.
Okay, and then Zach is asking, is it common to get asked for references?
Um, it's It's not, I would say it's not common. It does happen. Like I was looking, right, my indie studio is going to be hiring for a community manager soon, and so we were looking at a community manager role from League of Geeks, indie studio in Australia, and they definitely had a point of references. But um, I think this is where you can look back at people who you worked with, people who would be interested in vouching for your character, or your skills, and then just having them in their back pocket. And if I ever give out and I would never give out their information first, I would check in with them and be like, "Hey, I'm applying for this job and I'm really excited about it. And would you be open to my listing as a reference?" They might just ask like what it was like to work with me. And actually, come to think of it, for the job at Threshold, wasn't asked references, but for Beamable, I was asked references, and the hiring manager, who's now the person I report to, he did call those references. So.
All right, and then Mark said, with so many skills required to be an effective job seeker, how can you leverage those skills once you do get the job? It seems like a waste to get good at something just to not need it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, like the tragic reality of game development is that it's like many creative industries, very volatile. And I know people who like have worked in the game industry for 5 years, and then their company decided to they sold to another company, and that company decided to scale back, and then they had layoffs, and then now that person is suddenly out of a job. So I would say that getting good at asking for help and getting good at organizing yourself is a skill that you will find yourself relying on at all times of your life. Even now with myself, even though I have like these 2 jobs where I work, I have been spending a lot of my time speaking to people who are looking for work, and that's not like I'm using those skills of organizing my time by helping someone to understand how to do that. But the consequence of that is that it's actually made me a better producer because it's helped push me to be more organized as well. So I think just having a holistic perspective about those skills and understanding that a keen sense of where your time is spent and how to estimate how much time it's going to take you to do a thing, those are skills that are going to really support you no matter what job you have and no matter what industry. So I would just like look at these as lifelong survival skills.
Definitely transferable. So one of the things that I hear a lot, I guess I'm trying to think of how to phrase this nicely. So there's a lot of different career experts in a lot of different places, and there seems to be like a clear divide. If you don't know somebody on like LinkedIn or something, like there is a lot of people who just recommend like trolling their Twitter and trolling their LinkedIn and finding one little tidbit that you have in common and then just like cold calling them kind of. Like, have you any experience in that, and does it work? Like,
I will first say that if you are ever being ingenuine, it's very easy for people to see and spot that. And it's very easy for people to detect when you are being transactional in your relationship with them. If the and or like it's also fine that your relationship with someone would be transactional, right? Like you're not obligated to completely change your entire social sphere for this person to give some of their time to help you. And so I think having clear asks is really important. And it doesn't need to be where you like stalk their socials for a while and then you figure out that like, oh, you could be friends, but rather being organized in your own process. So like imagine this scenario where maybe I want to be a concept artist and I know nothing about concept art, but I do know artists, and artists may know concept artists. And if I can get my friend who's an artist to introduce me to a concept artist, then that's where I can reach out to them directly, either publicly on Twitter or something, or if their DMs are open, you can DM them, or if at all possible, get the personal introduction. The personal introduction is really powerful, and it is a way of extending the trust that like your friend has with that contact, extending that trust to you. And so a lot of my direct asks are I got really good at direct asking the more I did it. And so for me, the pillars were be very clear, be very actionable, and accessible. And so, and then also make it clear that it was perfectly fine if they didn't have the bandwidth for it, because you never know what a person's going through. Sometimes a person may be going through a breakup or a divorce or a job loss or a family death or personal health problems. There's all sorts of human crises and drama that a person could be going through at any moment. So just being very compassionate and empathetic to that, and like the ask that I would reach out that I've like kind of honed down has been like, hey, would you have time? Would you have like 30 minutes or an hour anytime in the next month to chat with me about production? I'm actively looking for work as a producer, and there's a couple job opportunities I've identified that I'm excited to apply for, but it would just be really helpful to talk to an actual producer and just get your feedback on how I'm positioning, on how I'm presenting myself. And so that's like a very clear ask that has like a very clear and transparent motive, has a very clear and transparent, like a finite ask. Like I'm not asking like, hey, can you be my mentor? Or hey, can you help me get into games? Because it's a very ambiguous question, but being like, hey, here's what I want. Here are the things that I've done already. Here's what I would need from you. And also, if that's in any way like out of your scope, that's also perfectly fine. And
I like that.
and like I've and like since looking, since speaking to those 90 producers over the past year, once I got my job, I also had a ton of cause to reach out to game developers in general. Like at my indie studio, we were hiring for a concept artist, and I had never hired a concept artist. And so I wasn't sure like what kinds of questions. I was responsible for putting together the interview process. And so I like, would reach out to concept artists, or I would reach out to art directors and be like, hey, have you hired for concept artists? Like, what has been really helpful? And so I got really good at asking that, asking the bid for help. So a clear bid for help, and something that's bite size and convenient. 30 minutes anytime over the next month is very approachable. Asking to like jump on a call or for any like extended relationship can be hard. But if you can get someone to like just meet with you and speak to you as a person in 30 minutes, and you show up kind and compassionate and interested and dedicated, like it really does a lot to help foment trust and just admiration. Like, when I was working with Ryan, and Ryan was like actively identifying jobs and like logging them and putting their thoughts and like writing their cover letters, like that was incredible. And so like that made me want to help them more. So thinking about like how can I like make how can I um how can I reward this person's participation? If this person's participation is to help you get a job, and maybe they agree to meet with you monthly, but then you meet with them 1 month and then the next month you meet with them, they're like, what did you do? And you're like, I did nothing. That is something that can hurt that relationship. So just um, having clear expectations about like, what do you expect of each other, is really helpful.
Yeah, I kind of like that distinction too, that it can be transactional. Um, because I think I struggle with that because I like people. So it's like I want to be everybody's friend, but I think that having a clear ask like that, it can be something where it's just kind of like a colleague type thing, right? You don't have to go out for drinks or anything. Like it's just like, hey, I have some questions about the job that you do. That's really helpful advice, I think.
and
Um,
and that like there's different tiers of people you'd reach to. So maybe like in your head you're like, I want to work at Bungie, let me talk to someone at Bungie. But what you really should be thinking is, I want to be a VFX artist. Who are other VFX artists, so that I can establish like who is the group of my peers, who are the people that also do the job that I do, because then they can also give you information. Or I even got a job offer from a company because I knew a producer that worked there, and they were increasing their headcount and they needed a producer. And so my friend who's a producer there was like, if you know someone who does the job that you want, that's another like um, field of intelligence that you can be getting for opportunities.
So Mark said that was a great answer to his question. And Josh said that I think a lot of these skills are good at getting you a job, would also benefit other areas, especially like learning how to research and ask for help. And I think that that's true. Asking for help, I think, is something that a lot of people struggle with. But I like how you broke it down to like, there's a clear ask, and this is what I've already done. And the reason I'm asking you isn't like, I don't expect you to educate me on everything. I just want to know like the specific thing that you're an expert in. And I find personally that when you ask people for help, it's like usually I feel like I'm putting them out, but it's kind of like endearing. Like people are like, "Oh, you want my help?"
Yeah, well, it's actually really empowering,
Hmm.
because it puts that person in a position to like actually acknowledge that they have achieved something, and that the skills that they actively use in their day are like worthwhile and valuable. And so like asking for help, uh, like on the receiving end, can feel like a gift, because it feels good to help someone. It helps foster that sense of like shared belonging, and that's a critical part of wellness.
Yeah. So I don't think there's any other questions. I feel like I've rambled enough that somebody else could have popped in there. So you said you have that template. Do you want them to like ping you, email you? Like, how? I know that like you shared it with me via email. What's the easiest way for that?
I will just clean it up and then make it a public Notion page, and then
Awesome.
anyone can just click on the link and then create as a duplicate.
Cool. Okay, so
And
we
if
will
anyone
do
has
that.
any questions, you can always reach out to me. My
Yes.
DMs on Twitter are open. That's probably the best way to reach out to me. You can email me stuff, but I also get like spam email, and I hate email in general. So a DM on Twitter is more than sufficient.
Yeah, isn't it funny how like now that email has become this thing that nobody really looks at anymore? Like it's like, oh, you didn't ping me on Discord. I'm never reading whatever you sent
Yeah.
me. So sorry.
I've definitely been hounded by like speaking opportunities of like, hey, you didn't submit your thing, and I'm like, oh, you emailed it to me. I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for coming today.
Yeah,
Do you have any?
I just wanted to add as well that like my distaste for emails also is shared by other people, so that
Oh yeah.
that's the power of social networks, and that's the power of having a consistent character across all of your like different social medias. Is like if you brand yourself as a insert job title that you want, and you have that reflected on your Twitter, your Facebook, your LinkedIn, and then you're actively talking about the challenges of looking for work in that field, and you're actively talking about job descriptions and like skills, and you like make it clear to other people that that's the thing that you do, it becomes easier. And asking for help on Twitter is so much better than asking for help on email, because people's inboxes are flooded, and no one's going to want to like check their email like after they get out of the workday.
Right. I'm already cruising on Twitter. Why not just DM me there?
Yeah.
Josh also likes Notion, so I actually hadn't heard about that until you showed it to me, and I just love it too. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
This was awesome. I really appreciate it, and I'm sure that others in the community will utilize those skills. Everybody, write down this Twitter because I know that Twitter gets answered. That's definitely Twitter is the best way. Reach out if you have any questions for Javiera later. And if you are able to hang out, I know it
Yeah.
might get late for you. We
Yeah.
will, hopefully
30.
the next one will be short and we'll just hop down and chat so you can meet some of the community too.
I love that.
Awesome. All right. So, Mark, are you going to unmute yourself and join me for a chat?
I've emerged from behind the curtain, yes.
You have emerged from behind the curtain. Okay. I've got to share my screen again. All right. Now, while we wait for Beth to share her screen, can everybody hear Mark? Somebody please confirm.
It needs to be checked because I'm not always good at it. Yeah. But I see the bar moving. I think I should be all right.
Yeah, okay. I think we're good. Okay, so presentation wise, I think I have their slide. So I just wanted to take this time. We relaunched the website. It's, as Lane had pointed out earlier, it's not exactly complete. We do have to update some of our policy pages and stuff like that, but that's kind of what we wanted to talk to you guys about today. So that's a little early. Where's my list? I don't have my list. Well, we'll do it that way. Okay, so one of the things that we've been working on is we've wanted to make IGDATC a little bit more inclusive for folks. So one of the things that I have read about is that like having a specific place where marginalized groups or historically excluded groups can meet and kind of like hang out without the overwhelming flow of the status quo kind of condemning us to have to act a certain way is really welcoming. And so what I want to do is I'm going to host a women in games gathering at some point. I haven't picked the date. I figured I'd announce it next month at the Gamedev Meeting. Mine's going to be virtual because a lot of women in games have kids and a lot of us just don't like to travel. So we'll hang out on Discord and kind of chat and stuff like that. It's more right now my how I imagine it is just kind of like hanging out, talking about games, talking about our lives, whatever happens to come up. We share a love for making games, playing games, developing games, stuff like that. But also, we have a lot of issues just as women that we can talk about in a safe kind of place. So I wanted to start something like that so that we can better integrate more women into our community. And along the same lines, I have asked Stephen to hold a he decided to call it the IGDATC POC get together, and this will be something that is specifically for POC community members. So it's great to have allies, but this is a place just for folks who identify as POC. It will most likely be in person, maybe a hybrid option. When Stephen decides on the exact venue that he wants, we will announce that also, but that will also hopefully be in mid or late September. So we've had discussions about in-person meetings. Mark, how do you feel about in-person meetings?
I feel tenuous about it. It's been a conversation for over a year, and we've mentioned it during the top of the show in the past. Like, as soon as this pandemic dies down, but like, the truth is, much of the world is open again, so it would not be unprecedented for us to do in-person events again. A lot of people do feel much more comfortable with them, but it's such a fuzzy line. There isn't like now it's fine. And everybody's comfort level is different. And so we as a board have been trying to figure out when would be the best time to do it. But on top of that, once we decide to do it, that's step one. We also need to, find a partner in a venue we can use, scheduling, organization, all that stuff. And that takes time. And in the time that happens, facts on the ground vis-a-vis the pandemic do change. And so I don't think it's unfair to say that we have had a lot of difficulty coming up with what our own feelings are and how we want to proceed. But I think the main logistical challenge has been finding a location. Because where we held events previously at the Nerdery in past years, even before the pandemic, they were planning to move to a new location. They have since done that, and they no longer have a space for us. And so it wasn't as if the partnership fell apart. It's just that they can no longer provide for us the way they've done so generously in the past. Now, the pandemic made it not a problem for a long time, but now it's a problem because we don't have an easy partner. And we want to find someone that, a location that we could build a relationship and out for the long term. The VR events, Zach has partnered with REM5 to start doing those hybrid events, and those have been going for a couple of months. And that, I think, is the model for a partnership, someone where it's mutually beneficial. And I know REM5 has been a great partner for us and for that event in particular. And we want to find something for the Gamedev meetings and for Twin Cities Playtest, if possible. So that's the sort of rambly version of why it hasn't happened yet. What do you think,
The
Beth?
rambly version.
The rambly version.
Yeah, I think
There's no other
good.
version, I
So
guess.
the rambly version is that we have discussed it as a board pretty much every month since the pandemic started. When we went virtual, it kind of was a thing like that we'd go, okay, how are the numbers? What's it look like? Are we comfortable? No. Okay, so we don't have a venue anymore because initially the Nerdery had thought that they might be welcoming us back, but the last that I remember is actually that they just weren't allowing outside groups at all in their facility. So I might circle back again now that things are opening up and ask them. But I think that's kind of why we're bringing it to the community, right? Is like we are looking for a venue that would be a good place for folks, but what does our community look like right now? Are we looking for South Metro? Are we looking for East Metro? Are we looking for West Metro? Are we looking for, what area first? And then do you know someone who has a facility that could fit us? That would be happy to give it to us for free because we are a nonprofit. We don't charge for our meetings. So that's one of the things that we have difficulty with is finding somewhere that will host us for in-kind donation kind of thing and let us meet there without expecting us to pay them. I mean, some of them, like the quotes and the places that we've looked were like $300 per meeting. And it's like, that's just laughable to me to even expect from us. So we're asking the community where like, do you have any leads on places? We would be happy to talk to people. I do know that we want to be in person. We've talked to, I'm thinking like it's like 3 or 4 venues in the last like 2-3 months. And I mean, it's still in negotiation talking about it, right? It like those things take time, especially when you're asking like for-profit businesses for a space.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's kind of, those first 3 bullets go together. If there's any businesses or things that you think we could partner with. So we have been talking to a lot of the esports organizations. There's Wisdom Gaming, so 2DCon's having their pre-party there. We've talked to them a little bit, and we're discussing if it might be a possible venue for like a global game jam or something like that. So there's, I think Black Ice is closed, but we did meet with them at one point to discuss having like a playtest event there. We were really excited, but it turned out didn't work out. And then the Minnesota Esports Club is actually, I forgot to put a slide in for that. That's what it is. Peter has been working with Peter from the Minnesota Esports Club. They are going to be doing some volunteer work at the Twins games to get funding for their org. And so as our organization, we're interested in helping support their mission, and we kind of want to test out what that kind of fundraising venue might be like. So we are looking for people who would be willing to volunteer to help out. It's basically working the concession stands at the games. If you're interested in any more information about that, let me or Peter know. We will hopefully post, I think Peter said he has a sign-up sheet for the dates that they chose soon, but I know he's not able to make it tonight.
Maybe we can talk a little bit more about that, because I know that the Alliance of Pete's setting up, getting something going for MEC, but also as a testing ground. I kind of think we should explain what this is, because for our org, we don't have any money, and it's like that's not a new problem. But I think our ambitions are starting to reach the point where we could use $1 or $2, and I think so. We've been thinking about a lot of fundraising opportunities, and this is a really interesting one.
Yeah, I don't have the brochure with me, but basically, I think it's like they want 10 people to volunteer for 10 games, right? Wasn't that what we were?
Yeah. They prefer like long-term commitments for nonprofit orgs,
Right.
Because essentially the concession stands at the Twins at Target Field. I don't know how many of what the percentage is, but a big percentage of the people manning concessions are from nonprofit organizations raising money for their own orgs. And the way it works is you get a cut of the sales, and you can put out a tip jar and everything. And apparently it's I mean, it is work. So you actually work for money. That's not that crazy a concept. But it actually is fairly lucrative for these orgs to do it. And it's something that that Beth, you came across it, right? And pitched it to us. And we went to a little informational session at Target Field where they sort of laid it out for us. And yeah, they want sort of a group of 10 people for 10 games, or more throughout the season. But there's also off-season events like concerts and stuff. And and you get like a check the next day or something. And it's not that fast, but it's pretty fast. It'd be a way for us to very quickly do some fundraising for our events, for special events, or to fund scholarships or other things we'd want to do as an org. But we got to it has to be a sustainable thing, right? We got to get a bunch of people willing to commit the time, donate their efforts and labor, more than once, right?
Right. Yeah, that's kind of why I said it's a test.
Yeah. Well,
if we can get some volunteers to help another org, and maybe we'll volunteer and I'll go there and I'll absolutely hate it and think it's not worth doing for even like for us if it's worth. I mean, you earn basically a little bit more than minimum wage anyways when you're working there, right? Like, isn't it for $12,000?
Yeah.
And if you like average it out over the hours and stuff, it seems like it's about minimum wage.
I was really skeptical. I'm like, this has got to just be a way for them to get cheap labor, right? But it actually is pretty good value for your dollar. It's something like $20 an hour per person. And that's minimum. Yeah. So if nobody buys any concessions, that's essentially the promise they make, is that you get this much at least that gets donated to your org. And then that is And so that math is like, oh, it's a little better than a reasonable wage, but that's the minimum. So in a really good night, you can take home a lot more than that. And you can put out, a tip jar, which is a new thing that they were really excited to tell us about. That people can donate directly to your org if they believe in it. So that's a cool thing. So like I was skeptical when we went into that informational session, but I came out a believer. But like it does require, we have to get things set up. So this MEC, that they are doing it, and if we have some of our folks help them out, we don't get any benefit from that other than little recon knowledge, and I think that's really cool. So if anybody's interested in that, they want to get in touch with Peter, but you can just email us and we'll forward you on.
Yeah, definitely. Any thoughts or feedback or whatever, our contact information is at the bottom of the slides. The Gmail account goes to the entire board. You can also just individually ping us on Discord or on Slack if you don't want it to go to everybody or whatever. Like, I know some people are comfortable sharing different kinds of things with different people. Like, if you feel more comfortable, like if you know Mark better or something like that, that's totally fine too. We'll come together. If you ask to be anonymous or whatever, I will just bring a community member brought this up at the next board meeting, sort of thing. Which is actually, I bring that up because the next bullet is the safe event policy and the code of conduct. We've been discussing rewriting what we currently have because it was good to have something, but I think we decided it doesn't really serve us in the current I guess method that we're meeting and like for future. And also the parent org did just update their ethics code and code of conduct. So we're kind of trying to come up with, I guess, a better way of kind of utilizing the parent org's structure that they have, but making it work for our community. So we're looking for feedback from folks in the community. If there are things that you definitely want to see in there, if there are things that you see as problematic that we need to address directly, stuff like that. I don't know, Mark, do you have anything to elaborate on that?
Well, you were saying, we're using the parent org's documents as a model, which, as is logical. But we want to make a document that does not have any of the overhead that we don't need that they have, make it suitable, not just copy and paste and be done with it. But that is a good technique, is to see what works elsewhere. So if you have any suggestions on what might go in a policy or a code of conduct and anything that is policies for our events, how we run the Discord or the Slack or anything like that. But also, if you know of any organizations that have good policies that you'd like us to take a look at, I think that is a good, who does it right? And maybe even if you've seen one that it didn't work for this org for this reason, we could maybe learn from that. Because I think we've done a lot of research as a board, but we want to make sure we don't get overconfident that we figured it out, right?
Right.
Because one of the things we've been trying to do throughout this whole pandemic era is, make the space feel more welcoming and, more open, more diverse, more inclusive. And we want to make sure that everything we do is a signpost on that journey, right? That we're always thinking about that as we move forward. And so, we're not experts on any of these topics necessarily. And so we rely on the community to help us as we move forward and as we revise. So once we figure this out, once we put it on the website, let us know what you think, so we can, it's never, there's no like final draft, right? We can keep evolving it, and that includes everything.
It's a living document.
Well, that's true of everything we do for the org, right?
Yep.
So like how we run meetings, how we do the streams. One of the things we missed that I wanted to make sure we got in is when we talk about going back to in-person events, we want to make it really clear to everybody that we will continue to be streaming on YouTube. Yeah, that's when we talk to partners about for locations. One of the bare minimum, the sort of minimum requirements is we need to be able to, whether it's their equipment or our setup or however it works, it cannot work unless we can continue to have remote speakers, have remote attendees, and record all the meetings for our records and for the benefit of the community going forward. Because one of the things I've loved about this past couple of years, every talk being on the channel is if I missed one or I need to recap one, like it's just there. We're building a library. And I think that's as important, if not more important, than having the events on the day. And so so that's a thing we do. But we want feedback on that also, on how we do that. Like how do we cater to an online audience versus a in-person audience? And how do we make you feel comfortable that as we get back together, that you don't feel left behind if you don't feel safe going to a public space?
Right.
Do you have and that relates to our, what our COVID policies are going to be. How we when do we cancel an event because of public health data? What are our thresholds? What should our policies be at the event related to masks and food and capacity and all that sort of stuff? We want to hear from everybody because we're the board of the org, we make the rules, we decide how it's going to happen, I guess. But only through the feedback of everybody. Otherwise, it has no sort of power. We're mouthpieces of the community. We shouldn't be the ones to decide in absence of opinion.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's one of the things that I really wanted to take this time to I know that we've only got 10 viewers or whatever, but people will hopefully watch it later. I wanted to take the time to actually ask the community actively for feedback. I think we all we oftentimes will offhand say oh, and if you have any suggestions, email us. But really, we want to know the community is run for the community, right? We volunteer to make sure that things work in a way that serves the people that we're supposed to be serving. So we make assumptions based on what we know and we understand and we feel, unless we hear different from everybody else. So that is one of the things that I don't know. I really, really want people to respond to this request for feedback because I feel like we've been deciding things based on our best knowledge. But I mean, we're 6 people out of hopefully a very larger community, even though the videos don't seem to support the same in-person that we used to get at the nerdery. I know that there are people that will come when we do go back to in-person. I'm hoping that there will be more than 10 people in a room. But if that's what we start at, I'm fine with that too.
Well, that's an important
but
part
I know
of it
there is a call for people wanting to get in person.
And thinking about we have sort of made a choice we don't want to do all these multiple steps, right? We don't have the capacity, right? Because we are a volunteer board. So we want to figure it out, plan it, and do it. And that means finding a partner who we feel we can get in the long term. But if another couple of months goes by and we can't, how does the community feel about us going by the seat of our pants every month finding a new space? I don't like that so much. But
I don't.
But if people are so anxious to get back and running, is that something that will help get the ball rolling and get people more invested? If that's the case, we want to hear it. If you think we're approaching this wrong, please let us know. Or if you think there's a better way we could try, I think it's important for us because we feel pretty confident in how we're doing things, but we are really ready to be told we're wrong, I think. And the more we hear from you, the more confidence we can have in what our eventual choices are, if that makes sense.
Josh is trolling me. Email us after we just talked about how people don't read email.
I know,
That's why I said, or ping me on Discord.
Yeah.
There is a chance. No, that the IGDA Twin Cities email goes to 6 people, so one of us will probably read it.
Yeah. And I also want to quickly say that we have 2 suggestions for meeting spaces to follow up on in the chat.
Yeah.
But the chat gets saved, but I don't know any of your usernames. So can you can you go to the Discord right now and just repeat yourself? That way we can find you later. To follow up with. Because there are 2 things we should follow up on for sure.
Oh, I missed those. Thank you, Mark. I skipped right over. Actually, and then it might be nice to have something for people who identify as not entirely abled. So that's why the special interest gatherings is the last bullet point too. The reason that we're having a POC meetup and a women's meetup is because Stephen and I are more than happy to host those events. If there are other groups that want to meet or other people who are willing to volunteer to host something like that. I mean, there are definitely lots of different gender identities and a lot of different, all sorts of identities that might want to hold their own kind of meetup. We do want to support that as IGDATC. It's difficult if we don't have somebody who's willing to spearhead it that actually fits into that community. Like, I was not going to hold a POC meetup myself, because I would be going against the whole, like, this is a safe place. Even though I feel like I am an ally, it's not meant for me to hold that space for someone. That's why I really appreciate that Steven stepped up to do that. So if there is another, like, if there's a person who wants to hold another special interest group, please let me know, or let us know, the board, whoever you're comfortable telling. We would be more than happy to work with you to try and figure that out. Definitely want to support everybody.
Yeah, and Beth, do you want to talk a little bit about that article that you made the board read? Or you asked me to, and we brought it to the board because it was really, I mean, it was really an interesting perspective on exclusive spaces, and is what you're talking about. It's like, it's not like for me to set up a women's and games meeting, like, all fine, but like I'm not the avatar for that. Like you and I are not avatars for a person of color meetup, and allyship can only go so far. And I would like if you could share that article that you shared with us in the Discord.
Yeah,
that has a great has a great point of view on why that's important, and that's something that you think about. We try to make our meetings inclusive, but that is difficult in when there are minority groups who are the minority, right? Like it's just not good enough. And I was pretty moved by that argument. And I think a lot of people should look into that. And if that can inspire you to start up a special interest gathering of your own, we are here to support you, and that's our job, right? So if you want to do a hybrid event, we can help you, look to find partners like we're trying to do for our main meetings. If you want to host something online, we can help you set up places to do that on our Discord. If you're looking to do something that it's actually a streamed event, we can help get the sort of the minimal infrastructure we can offer. We can make that happen for you, but I think, like you say, Beth, it's more authentic, I think, when it's spearheaded by those in the community, because it's not us sort of pandering to that audience, which, as well-meaning as it can be, is something that it's not really sustainable. So if you want to be that person to help, that we're here to help you.
Yeah, I think that's the important part of allyship that I think people actually lack, is that, like, it's not about putting yourself in the center, right? Like, it's not about us. It's about, like, the specific identity that's in question. Like, I would appreciate, Mark, if you wanted to run a women in games meetup, but I would be like, why? Even knowing you, even respecting you and as an ally, I would wonder, like, what's the motivation for that? Like, no offense to you, of course.
Yeah.
I love you, Mark. You're a great guy, but it's different than,
but truthfully,
like,
I don't
if
share your
myself
perspective,
does, right?
right?
Oh, no. Yeah, exactly.
That's really what it is like, I can be a supporter, but I just literally can't be an organizer. I essentially can do whatever you ask me to help, but yeah, I can't be someone who is centered in any way. That's and I suppose there are varying opinions on the role of allies, but I think that's where I land, is that it's not my place to be at the front of the crowd, charging into battle on these things, but to be whatever other military metaphor I'm leading it to.
So Carl asked, with the fundraising, what would the funds primarily support? And I guess for me, the answer is it depends on what kind of funds we get. If we were to get that sweet, is it like 12K from the twins thing? Something like that?
I do
like, if
remember
we were to
my
get, like,
eyes spun around with dollar signs, so it was pretty high.
Right.
Yeah.
If we got a substantial amount of money, like, we did say that we were going to put some money behind our special interest group.
Right.
basically our efforts in diversity.
Board. We made a board vote on that. That is now
Yep.
board bylaw, is that the first money that we get will be to supporting this initiative.
Yep. So that might be renting a space for the meetup. That might be buying pizza for the meetup. That might just be, I don't know, getting stuff that we are requested to have for the meetup. Like, I don't know, like, I don't even know what I might want as a woman in games meetup. I feel like it would just be like a case of Coke and some cookies. But, you know, if we have the money to do something like that, it would be up to the people who are running those special interest groups to decide what they would want. And I think reasonable asks, the sky's the limit there, right? If we got enough money, I do want to start paying our speakers. I think that a small stipend just to thank you for your time, even if it's virtual, even if you don't have to leave your house, if you sit at home in your pajamas, but you have given us an hour of your time. I mean, even just $20 per speaker or something, like just something to say thank you. That's one of the things I would like to do. Venue rental is one thing I never want to pay for, but like that, I mean, you did mention it. I, if we had to rent to pay a venue, that would be something. But I think we can find an in-kind place. I don't think we have to pay for a meetup space. So I would reserve that for like workshops, for scholarships to conferences. For one of my like goals is like if Gamers Rhapsody or 2DCon to be able to pay for developers to have tables, stuff like that, like because it's supporting a local convention, but also giving our local community like a space to demo their games. All sorts of, I don't know.
I mean, ultimately,
tons of ideas.
Well, that's the thing. It's I mean, as an organization that's never spent a dime on anything, because we've never had a dime to spend, we would need to make sure, we would need to take some time to figure out what we could spend on and what our priorities would be. But we have now gotten to the point where we've identified a couple of things that we can't do without a little bit of funding, and we've decided that we want to do those things. And ultimately, our goal is to support. I mean, we're a professional, you know, sort of a trade organization in a way, right? Where we want to support the burgeoning careers of the game devs in this community. And that means things like tickets to GDC, which are stupid expensive, or sponsoring a booth at a convention, either local or not local. And that, and providing funds, scholarship funds for training courses, for the kinds of things. I mean, even if it's just those kinds of like things you spend $100 to $200 on, a little bit of education. Like if we could have some money to fund for that, that would be great. And we, when it comes to things like scholarships, to be able to identify the people who need that help. And provide that funding to those people, and with enough money, that group of people is bigger, and so that could mean you. And so I think there's a lot in it that we can do together, but we're at the point now where it's still all dreams and stardust, but we can see the road ahead of us, and we want to make sure that we're ready, when we can put those into motion, that we can actually do the most good for the community.
Yep, definitely. And I mean, if you think back to that last Global Game Jam site we had in person, y'all, that was like very minimal money out of my pocket. If we had a budget for events, like we could have such cool swag bags and like, I just think about it. And it like makes my, you said though, the dollar sign spun when they said, I think it was like over 10,000. Like it was just like, what would we even do with that? Like I haven't had $100 to use for like anything.
Yeah, I think a lot of us have put a little bit of our own money into various IDGA things. Certainly we put in a lot of our time. But I think we've benefited, like a lot of no money operations, we've benefited from partnerships and generosity of others. The problem is that that's not sustainable. You just, every now and again, you get lucky and have a cool thing happen. We needed something sustainable. And so we're going to continue to rely on that, I think, because we certainly wouldn't want to stop getting things for free when we can. But we want to make sure that we're not just, hoping that, this year we'll get a great place for Global Game Jam that we don't have to spend any money on. We want to make sure that we are going to hold a Global Game Jam and whatever it takes, right? And that we can promise that every year, and we are going to provide these things on a consistent basis.
Mhm.
And in order to do that, we need a little bit more of that security. And maybe that involves
Yeah.
putting out a tip jar for donations. We haven't really considered that directly. One of the things that we've, as an organization for years, have said, I don't bother being an IDGA member. One of the things being an IDGA member does is the bigger our org is officially, according to the parent org, the more likely that they will fund our operations. And IDGA has gone through some changes recently, and some more opportunities for local chapters to make for requests for reimbursements and to apply for what are called impact grants, which are small amounts of money for various things. And we're going to be exploring those as well. But we also maybe we'll put out a tip jar. I don't know. We have to figure out the logistics of that and see how people would be interested in that,
Yeah, I think that's one of the things too we debated on with like the parent org stuff, right? Is they didn't want us holding money kind of thing.
There's
So
logistical problems.
the logistical problems with it. So we haven't really been able to actively fundraise, but that is our plans for the next like year or so. Once I get like the clarification from them, like the final like yes, this, I plan to like approach like Target and Best Buy and all of the places that can benefit from knowing our game developers
Yeah.
to see if they want to give us some cold hard cash or meeting space or whatever.
Yeah,
But again, it's whatever.
Well, also, I mean, we benefit from people's volunteer efforts because the board is a volunteer board, but if you can be an IDGATC volunteer without having to be on the board, if you have a particular skill set that can help us here, if you have any partnership experience or know someone who might be able to assist us, please let us know.
Yes.
We want to rely on the collected talents of not just the board, but the entire community. And so please don't feel like you have to leave it to us. We want everyone to pull together and help sort of do more with the org.
Yeah, we definitely want you as a community to feel empowered to help the community as a whole. Really, I feel like whenever we're asking for like support for these kind of things, it's not like Mark or I personally benefit from anything really happening. Like I'm not going to pay myself ever. That's not like the board getting a stipend is not in the plans anywhere.
Yeah, the more we do and the more effective we are as an org, the harder it's going to be for us either way. So
yes, yes, I keep adding work.
Yeah.
Every board meeting, everybody gets extra homework. So like it's not about us. It's about making it better for everybody.
Yeah.
And we've been talking also about the board elections when we get back in person. That's going to happen at some point. And if you vote us out and you want to do it, somebody else wants to do this, like we've got a great setup for you.
Yep.
There's agendas and there's a Google Drive and everything.
Yeah,
so,
we actually, I mean, Beth's joking a little bit, but we've done a lot of like continuity planning. Because there's a comment in the chat, like, has this chapter always been ahead of the curve? And we feel a little bit, we do very much feel fly by night, but like we do 3 events a month. We didn't stop our stride through the pandemic. And we are, I'm proud of us as a local chapter. I think we've done a lot. I think we compare favorably to other chapters. I mean, nobody has resources. Everyone's trying their best. And so it's always easy to feel like, oh, well, we're not doing, things aren't good enough but I'm proud of us. But I think being ahead of the curve is not enough. I think we do want more for the org to serve its ultimate mission, which is to help people in this community.
So I think, did we hit everything?
Probably, maybe not. Probably though.
Maybe not. I don't know. Like we talked about a lot of different things, but there's always other things that we don't think of. So if there is anything we didn't mention tonight that you want to discuss, we would be happy to hear from you. Yeah, I think I just want people to talk to me. I feel like we're like leading in a vacuum, but I know people watch the videos because I see people comment and then I see like the views go up later. So I know other people are seeing the videos even if they can't join us on the night of. So yeah, I do. Because I do want to get back in person, but it's going to take a village to get that to happen, I think.
Yeah.
Any other closing thoughts, Mark?
Well, let's just see if anything in the comments is worth commenting on. That nerdery and pizza was amazing, correct?
That sure was.
And they gave us that pizza. Like, that's how lucky we were for all those years. They paid for it. They didn't. They just opened their doors to us. It was such a great partnership. And so, I mean, if we don't have that anymore, like, we just be thankful for how long we had it, you know. But we want to get back to that and better. So if funding is the answer, that's part of it. Are there limits to fundraising? Caps, shirts, swag? I know Peter has wanted to get a pin made.
With that sweet new logo.
Yeah.
Come on, Mark. It just begs to be like...
I made the logo. I want to see it on a pin too. Yeah, I think that if we could do something like a print-on-demand kind of swag service, something where we don't have to have any overhead, that would be an opportunity for people in the community to support the org indirectly. You know, those things are usually pretty low margin things, but it'd be nice to do. If there's a lot of interest, certainly, I mean, if nothing else, just promoting the fact that the org exists. Like, you know, the people who come to the meetings, who watch the videos, you know, that's sort of the core audience of our org, but each of you also has your circles, and you know, we're not, you know, I would love to ask everyone to just constantly proselytize the org all the time, but you know, if we're making shirts, maybe that will help. I don't know, more than just the whatever $1 or $2 profit we get off of something like that. So that would be kind of interesting. But again, all those ideas, and of course, if someone wants to help us set that up, you know what I mean? It requires. I've done merch for, actually, I'm wearing my Nice Games Club shirt, and you know, it takes some effort just to set it up. And so if anyone wants to volunteer their time to help us with any of these initiatives, however small, I mean, if you just have a little bit of free time, you want to help us make an impact and do something, please get in touch. If you, like, I want to do this thing, it's a crazy idea, but, like, well, if you want to put the effort in, it's what we've always said about events. It's like, if you want to run an event under the banner of IDGATC, we don't approve it. We don't have to say yes or no. We just have to, like, tell us what you want to do, you know? It's your community.
Yep. Yeah. So, I guess that's pretty much. Are we done begging? I think we're done begging.
Probably. We'll do it again next month. Just a little.
We'll do it again. We'll remind you next month.
Well,
but yes.
Let's just take this conversation into Discord chat.
Yeah, that's perfect. So
Cool.
We will pop down into the other channels. Thanks everyone for coming.
Yeah. Thanks, Javiera, for a great presentation.
Oh, it was amazing.
You said you threw it together last minute, but it was really, really good, and I think everybody agrees. So great stuff.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Extremely last minute.
Yes, I do want to add an extra thank you because we had a different speaker scheduled and they canceled, and so Javiera just popped in like 3 days in advance. Now, like, I was like, oh, by the way, would you be willing to talk on Wednesday? And so it's like extra amazing that. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I also just want to say I visited a few other chapters of the IGDA, and this is like the most organized I've ever seen. It's actually really impressive. So I don't know if you're.
That's kind of scary news, actually.
I mean, it's so real. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we all it's our second or third thing. You know, it's there's no full-time thing, so people are doing their best, and that includes us.
Yeah, I'd definitely be interested to know, like, how many people in your community are actively looking for work.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We could tweet that out if Peter's paying attention because I don't do social media.
Well, let's head over to the Minneapolis room or St. Paul room. Whoever gets there first gets to decide which room it's in.
Well, I think it's Minneapolis's turn, but I could be wrong.
I mean, don't throw me a bone. Like.
All right, we'll see you down there.